Hey, Renter Retires, it's Adam Schrader here with another episode, and I am joined as usual by Zach Lemaster, but this time it is a BiggerPockets live stream when we took over their Instagram account and they allowed us to do one. And this is the third and final segment of that live stream. Really hope you're enjoying these. Hope it has a lot of value for you.
So he's closing on the property. He has free clear title. He's got his inspection report. He's got his appraisal that came back good. So there's no negotiation on price with the seller. And he has his insurance policy and certificate to his lender prior to closing. He's good to close on his property. And now he needs to get set up with management. Let's assume he's already did what we talked about earlier and sourced the right property manager. But let's just spend a little bit of time on this because this is probably one of the most important things is finding a quality property management company, whether you're local or out of state. And I highly encourage people to learn how to do this because your time is better spent running your business, not operating in your business, changing toilets and taking tenant calls. While I know that some people find that valuable to self-manage, that's okay. But eventually, if you want to scale this business, you need to know how to find good property management in any market. And let's talk about some things that you look at for finding good property management, Adam.
How many doors? I mean, how long have you been in business and how many doors do you manage? If it's somebody who only manages 40 doors, they better have a pretty darn good reason. I want to know how big your email list is, if they'll tell me that, because that's going to tell you, how many people they're able to market your property to. If they manage 40 doors, but they have a list of 10,000 people, then maybe I'll talk to them. But, it's really, you want to make sure that the people you're dealing with who are going to manage your property have been doing it a little while, and that they can actually get somebody in a reasonable timeline, which a big thing is where are you going to market it, which pretty much everybody's going to go, MLS, Zillow, Realtor.com, those places, but they also are going to be internally marketing the property. And so you want to make sure that they have a list to actually internally market.
Here's where I've been the most successful with finding good property management teams out of state. And I've spent a ton of time looking at this. And it's something we do as a business, right? To determine who's going to be the best property management team in this local area for ourselves and our investors. What we found is that, there can be some variances here in terms, I see questions about like, how do you find them? Like how many doors do they need to know? Those aren't hard and fast rules by any means, but you kind of have this spectrum, right? You have your mom and pop investors or property managers. Again, make sure they're licensed. In most states, you need a brokerage license. Make sure they have systems in place. They're using software. So you have your end of the spectrum where they're mom and pop investors to your national type of companies that are across the country. And where we've had the most success for us is somewhere in between, where you have a professional team that is hyper local to that area, but they have a big enough established team where you're probably looking at 10 plus employees, where they do in-house maintenance. And again, we could spend a whole day talking about management. Maybe we will in the future, but for right now, we're just trying to give you little nuggets of knowledge to help you be successful. Make sure they have property management software they're using. I would say minimum number of doors, probably 100. If you want and probably where we see the best companies are between that 200 to 500 range. Very seldom do we work with large national-based companies because you have people coming and going on the local team so much.
Yeah. The other big question that I would have is, do they actually answer their phone? I mean, if you call the main number and it just rings and rings and rings, and then you leave a message and nobody calls you back for 3 days, that's going to be what your tenant gets too. And a tenant who gets pissed off at the property manager, they're moving. And that's going to cause turnover, that's going to cause a tenant placement fee, and it's not going to be good. So if they're ignoring you and you're the person who's actually, their customer and paying them, then they're going to ignore your tenant too, and it's not going to go well. Now, looking at like Google reviews isn't going to do a ton for you because the only people who leave Google reviews are mad tenants usually. But, if you've got somebody with 40 doors or 50 doors and they have a ton of negative reviews, it's probably not a good sign. If you're dealing with someone with 200-300 doors and they have a few negative comments, doesn't really matter. But how long does it take them to actually respond to you? Because that's you and the tenant.
Guys, after working in over 3,000 doors over the past decade across the country, the property management issues boil down to two main things that we've seen. It's communication, as Adam mentioned, and it's improper accounting, right? Like you need someone that's going to provide you with an accurate report on a monthly basis. That's not, that's not just you have all these charges you don't know. Like it's just a mess, right? Like you need to have a clear expectation on your accounting and know that if you need to call someone up, yeah, they may not answer if it's not that like that instant, but they're going to get back to you in a timely manner. And same thing goes with a tenant. But here's what I would look at. And you need to probably, if you're starting this from ground up, again, we have established management teams. We're happy to provide those resources for you. But if you're looking at a different market or something like this, get recommendations from people, because that is going to be the best way. Just like finding property inspectors, recommendations for property managers is huge. But also understand where that investor is coming from that recommended them. I think the biggest things you can do to find management is put them on the hot seat and ask them a full list of questions. It's how many doors do you operate? How long you've been in business? Go out and Google them, right? There should be some feedback on them, and understand property management, you guys, hard business here, right? You're in between tenants and owners, and sometimes both of them are pissed off. So just take that with a grain of salt. But you do need a good one that's going to be responsive, have appropriate accounting. Ask them these questions, okay? And write these down if you're in the process of looking at management. What is your average occupancy timeline? What is your average vacancy timeline? How long does it take to re-rent a property? What is your average rental ready bid on your property? Do you have in-house maintenance? If you do you charge a surcharge? Do you charge a trip charge? How many times are you viewing a property at all? Do you go on an annual inspection? How do you handle lawn care and utilities if it's not a tenant requirement? Your property manager is someone that needs to look at, they're going to be your eyes and ears of the property, right? What accounting software do you use? How often are you distributing rents? When are those rents going out? Most of the time you're being paid the month after your tenant's paying. What is your policy and procedure for late fees and when someone doesn't pay rent? In most cases, your rent, if it's due on the 1st, maybe there's a grace period on the 5th, then you're going to, apply that late fee. How are they actually charging that? You need to understand the fee structure for them, right? Typically in the Midwest, we see management between 8 to 10%. That's an average industry standard. They also have leasing fees like this. What is your average leasing fee? Lease renewal. It's not uncommon to see a full month's rent for leasing the property. And you got to know those type of things. What does a contract look like, right? What are your exit abilities? Are they going to charge you an arm and a leg if you need to cancel that contract? Biggest piece of advice I can give to anyone that's having issues with management is try to get it back on board, but don't, just like having a bad employee in your business, do not keep them around longer than they need to be. You need to hire slowly and fire quickly. Find good property management.
I've been a victim of firing too slowly, and whenever I ended up leaving and moving to my new company, I was so much happier. It made my life so much easier. I mean, whenever you start having trouble, if you can't get it resolved quickly, just move on. Even if you're under contract, there are ways to break contracts. In every single one. Do it legally, obviously, but just know that there are outs and everything, and you can get into that. And then also, once you have the property management, you're not done. You want to be checking your statements monthly. There will be things that come up. Remember, every single one of them is going to have in the contract how much of your money they can spend before they ask you. That's negotiable. If they say, anything under $500 we take care of, and, anything over that we ask for your help. When you first get started, that number should be lower than 500. Maybe it's 200, maybe it's zero. If you start having trouble with them, it becomes zero and say any repair needs to be done. But if you're going to do that, you have to answer the phone whenever they call, and you have to approve those repairs. And then if you do see repairs coming up because, the property is something's going on, you need to call them up or email them and say, hey, is this actually my expense, or is this something that was fixed and I'm paying for it now, but the tenant's paying me back? And you need to be sure that they're actively checking with the tenant to make sure, because if you're getting a bunch of things to go out there and unclog drains, that's not something you should be paying for. You need to be making sure that the things that are done because of what your tenant has done are being paid for by the tenant, because that's not an expense that you should have to bear.
Usually there is a threshold as well where it's like, okay, if there's an expense and it's a non-emergent expense that's over, say, $300 or $500, like you need my approval typically before you go out and just do that, right? And that's why they have a reserve account. So you need to know, like, what is that reserve account, and then How are they handling those? Don't let them have just free reign to make all these repairs without your approval. If there's a large bid and they have to sub it out, how many bids do they get? This is my biggest frustration with investing out of state. And I need to make this point extremely clear to everyone. If your property management comes back and they give you this bid for this astronomical charge, and they don't give you any other bids, that is a red flag. And you need to go out and find a team that will give you multiple bids, or go out and get multiple bids on your own. I can't tell you how many times we've seen a property management team come back and they have a $10,000 bid for something that another contractor came back with, something that was like $1,000 to $2,000 or potentially even less. I have endless amount of stories like that, and that's super important. There is a thing where property managers are taking advantage of out-of-state investors. You just need to know that, and that's why it helps to have a support group, things like BiggerPockets, rent-to-retirement community, where you can bounce those things back and forth and say, is this normal? And what do you suggest? Don't just sign off on that first bid, okay?
Yeah, and I also learned, you'll learn new things all the time. I recently learned that my property manager, if an appliance went out, they went and got used appliances to replace it with. They were charging me for used, but I didn't realize that. And so, I replaced, I was talking to them about, I want to get a new refrigerator. And they're like, yeah, we don't do new. We only do, these ones, and they usually last for 3 to 4 years. And I said, well, I want a new one. And they said, well, we'll do it, but you have to order it. So I had to call up Lowe's or Home Depot and, buy the fridge, give them my property management contacts info, and then they came and replaced the fridge, and I got a new one. But I wouldn't have gotten that new one. I would have paid $400 for a used one that maybe would last 3, 5, 6 years, or I can just buy a new one for $650, $700. And now I've got one that's probably going to be good for 15 years.
Adam, do you know what that's called? It's managing your property manager. And
got to manage the manager.
Listen, there's no such thing as passive income. I hate to break it to everybody, but there is ways that you can set up your systems and teams in place to have a generally passive investment portfolio. But you still need to have oversight of all of these things, right? You need to be you need to be looking at your accounting statements, and you need to be holding your property management team accountable. A couple other points that we got to move on just for time purposes on management. Again, we could spend a whole day talking about this, right? And lessons learned. Set expectations appropriately up front with your management team. Know who your dedicated point of contact is, and always, make it a point, especially in the beginning, to check in with them at least once a month and just review everything. You want to build a good relationship with them. Keep in mind, property management is a partner. And so you need to treat them like a partner, even though they're working. Technically, you're hiring them. Treat them like a partner and build that relationship. It's important to also look at their vetting for tenants. And we have a whole list of things you need to do, like, do they make 3 times monthly rent? Are you allowing pets? If so, are you charging a fee? How are you looking at references? Are you checking, non-family references? Are you calling 2 previous landlords, not just the current landlord that may want to get rid of them, et cetera, et cetera? There's a whole list of things. Ask about their tenant vetting. All right, back to our story. John Doe has successfully found a good property manager, and he is cash flowing in his Kansas City property that he decided to buy. And now he loves real estate. He's got the bug. He's telling all his friends and family about it. But now it's time for him to reflect on his experience and scale up. So I want to just come to the conclusion here, and we will get to questions, you guys. Thanks for hanging in till the bitter end with us. Remember, we're going to give away $500 to people that are still on this thread. You got to be on this thread, right? You got to be able to answer. And so we're going to try to wrap this up in the next 15 or 20 minutes here. We truly thank you for your time and participation this evening. John wants to scale over time, and he's looking at things. Let's just give him a few key bullet points so we have some time for questions, Adam. What, based on his story, that if you can remember, how can John go and scale over time, and how should he do it appropriately? He's got this one property in KC that he bought that's cash flowing well. What's next for him? What are some recommendations on the easiest ways to scale over time versus just working his job, saving up a down payment for his next property?
Yeah, your return on equity is 0%. So look at your properties, see where there's equity, see where it makes sense to pull it out. If you've got 100 grand, 100, 200 grand that you could pull out of your, primary residence, for example, see if it makes sense. That money is just sitting in there, and yeah, you might feel good that, I have all this equity in my house. Well, if you've got access to 200 grand and you don't access it, you've got nothing. So you want to be looking at there and seeing, even if it's not necessarily a cash out refinance, maybe you look into HELOC terms and see. I know somebody mentioned HELOC earlier. The great part about HELOCs is if you use that money, you are 100% financed on the deal. You have no money in it. So if it cash flows $1, you have an infinite return on investment. The hard part is you have to actually find a property that 100% finance can cash flow. But just look at the equity that you have. I mean, even if it reduces, let's say he gets some other properties in the future and he looks back at this first one in Kansas City and he says, I could pull out 40 grand from the property, but my interest rate's going to go up. It's going to lower my cash flow. Well, what else can you do with that money? And is it going to get you the same or more? It gives you another asset to diversify your risk. So in reality, does it matter? Not really. So look at where your money is just sitting around doing absolutely nothing for you and figure out how your money can do something for you.
For time purposes, I'm going to list off just a few bullet points, at least based on John's situation, but also in general of how you can scale. And if you guys like the content that we've covered, we went rapid fire through just a lot of stuff that we can easily go granular on and give you a lot more resources. Put in some likes and some positive comments in the thread. Show BiggerPockets that this was valuable to you guys and you'd like us to come back. I would love to come back and do a whole section just on property management, on financing out of state, on all these things, right? So
and we can also take the comments here, throw it on, and we can do, we have our own podcast and we can answer the questions that you have on there. If we don't have time here, you can subscribe to us and listen to us and BiggerPockets.
Absolutely. And again, our company is Rent to Retirement. It's renttoretirement.com. Find all of our educational resources, find market information, learn about turnkey investing. But this is my advice to John in learning how to scale a portfolio or ways he can scale. We all know that real estate builds equity over time, right? And we see a lot of our investors after 4 to 6 years, they have their down payment on their one property that's went up in equity, where they can now sell that property in 1031 exchange to buy 2 or 3 more rentals. And you guys, it is a cool thing when you get to a point where your rental properties are buying rental properties and you get this compounding effect. I always tell people that real estate investing is an exponential growth curve. It's not a linear graph, but it's slow in the beginning to learn how to scale, and you got to do it appropriately. But some other things you can look at. John has $100K of equity in his property. To your point, Adam, he could take out a HELOC. The best bank to do that is a local credit union for a HELOC, 100%. I've had most of my HELOCs are 90% loan to value, and people tell me you can't do that. Find a local credit union, take out a HELOC. You can use that as a down payment. That's a non-taxable event to take out a HELOC, right? That's great. Now you get a return on your equity. He can use that HELOC as a down payment on multiple properties. He can partner with people. He's excited. He's telling his friends and family and colleagues about investing. He can partner. And my brother-in-law has bought so many properties and he owns 50% of them without even coming to the table with a down payment, because he's partnering, he's finding the deals, and he's partnering with the right people. Or partnerships are, the sky's the limit. There's no exact way to do a partnership. It's whatever terms are acceptable to people. People can loan you money, you can invest that. You can buy a property together where you both put a down payment down on a property. You can both be on title. Only one person needs to be on the loan. So you can have one person that can finance the property, and you can bring in people that, if you're at your 10 conventional loans, so there's plenty of ways to partner with people. John in this scenario had $80,000 in between a 401k and an IRA. He can work with a a self-directed IRA custodian and roll that money potentially over to self-directed, where he can then invest that money. And there's financing available for that. We have all those resources that we put in that link for you. These are a ton of different ways that John can scale over time. But ultimately, it's important for him to stay on the path. Real estate investing is a lifelong journey. It's a way to create financial independence. There's a reason why more millionaires are made in real estate investing than any other asset class, and it's an exciting thing to continually do that will create generational wealth. And we didn't even talk about the tax advantages today, Adam, but that is my favorite topic, because there's nothing else that compares to the tax advantages to long-term buy and hold real estate. And one last point about John's story: his wife is she works part-time. She's raising the family. Maybe John can involve her in the business to some degree, where she can start managing the properties and qualify as a real estate professional, where she does like a cost segregation study to offset their taxable income, right, on their rental properties. I think that is something that maybe to look at for her or other investors. This is something we've personally done, is just buy every piece of real estate we buy because we are real estate professionals. We take accelerated depreciation because it's still available right now, and we reduce our taxable income to zero, where we get to invest that money and earn a return on it. So,
I
Adam,
see somebody asking about they'd love to hear more about tax advantages. You don't want to get Zach started on tax advantages of real estate. You'll be here until, I don't know, Friday afternoon listening to him. So the link that he keeps mentioning is in the is in Rent to Retirement Invest in the bio there. It'll stay there, but you can find all of the resources we have there. I've seen a couple people ask where they can find it. Go to the Rent to Retirement Invest profile. You'll find it there in the bio.
Adam, any final words about John's story? I want to get to a few I want to do a rapid fire with a lot of the questions. There's a ton in here, and I just want to do a quick answer. And then in 10 minutes, for the people that can hang out till the half-hour point, we'll do the raffle, and then we'll try to work our way through some additional questions. I know you have to go soon too. So,
well, I would just say to John, congratulations. Stick with it. I mean, realistically, but that's the thing is you're not going to have, if you don't have a community, like for example, a BiggerPockets community, a local group, nobody's going to congratulate you on your successes. Maybe your spouse will, maybe your, kids might, but most likely you're just going to be doing this on your own, chugging along, and, you might even start thinking, it's taking so long, especially you mentioned that hockey stick. It really is, but that hockey stick takes 4 years or so to really start climbing. So for 4 years, you're chugging along, putting your money in towards properties. Maybe if you're doing it on your own, maybe you're spending your weekends, swinging a hammer in a house, and you're not seeing the exponential growth that's going to come. And so having people around who are actively investing and cheering you on will do a whole lot to you as things progress.
100%. Yeah. And you guys, on a final note, again, my name is Zach Lee Master. I'm the owner of Rent to Retirement. I was able to replace my income in retirement that I would have spent my entire life working for in the military on a pension and retirement program in a few short years of dedicated investing. And this isn't being creative. This isn't burning properties. This is buying rental real estate, making sure the numbers make sense in the right location strategically. That is the biggest thing. And just doing it again and again, right? And when you do get that exponential growth, it happens quickly, and you really compound over time. But you got to build the foundation over time, and then you can do some real cool stuff like trade up to commercial assets and larger multifamily. Get your foundation in single family and small multi in the right locations in the U.S. So let's go through and answer some questions here. We won't have time to answer everyone, but please, if you do have additional questions, throw them in the bio or in the thread. And I'm sure that we'll have the opportunity to answer these more in depth over time. So, Adam, rapid fire here. Do any of the new builds have potential to perform well as a short-term rental? I think this is specifically ours, and we'll avoid our specific questions, but maybe some markets, others not so much.
Yeah, we evaluate everything as a long-term rental first. Put it that way.
Okay. How to find an Airbnb manager. This still applies to the same managerial teams. Look, here's a quick side note for Airbnb managers, because our short-term rentals operate in the top 1% of the market we're in. Go to AirDNA and some other resources. They'll give you the properties that operate, like they'll rank properties. Go to AirDNA and Airbnb and find the properties that are operating in the top 1%, see who's managing those, and call them. And that's exactly how we found our excellent property managers. Or ask people that have been successful. There's short-term groups and mentorship groups, all around.
I do want to touch on one thing before we get to more questions, and that is we talk about finding these other markets, and you've alluded to it earlier. We want you investing in, Zach likes to say, 3 to 5 properties in 3 to 5 markets, and this is because downturns are going to happen. I mean, regardless of what happens for the rest of humanity, downturns will happen. If you have all of your properties in an area where the downturn happens, you're in trouble. I mean, to put it kindly, you're in trouble. So we want you diversified across geography, across price points, across rent points. We want your tenant pool to be diverse. We want your properties to be diverse, because that way, if it comes around and 4 of your homes get hit and your tenants have to leave or get evicted because of the economy, you've got your other 5, 10, however many you have, to support those while the downturn happens. A lot of times everything will be running great, but when the downturn comes, you want to be diversified so that if something happens to some of your properties, you have the support of the other properties to continue along the way. So just because you find one great market doesn't mean stop there. Build
We
up
talk
that
about
market, move on.
we talk about all the time about building a presence in a market and economies of scale. Yeah, you don't want to own 20 properties across 20 different markets, and you don't want to own 20 properties in one market. And I think the best way to do is have an established presence, but then, maybe 3 to 5 properties in 3 to 5 markets is a great way to go. You get to have perspective, compare and contrast the different markets. You don't have all your eggs in one basket. Adam and I talk about this lottery property concept where, you can invest in multiple different markets, but, and sometimes you just don't know what the future is going to be. Some of those properties may not turn out well, and that's okay. You can sell those, right? Get rid of those and continually maintain your portfolio appropriately. But sometimes you invest in a property you have no anticipation it's going to turn out well, and it goes through the roof. You're in the next up and coming area, and all of a sudden that property's quadrupled in price, and you didn't plan for that. You just planned out based on the cash flow, but that's because you had a diversified portfolio. And we've seen that happen over time, you guys. It only takes 1 or 2 of those to make a huge impact on your life. So that's a huge benefit of diversifying just in general as well. So, all right, more questions. What is a non-recourse loan, Adam?
So non-recourse loan means that they can only come after the property. This is what you're going to have in your retirement accounts primarily, because they want to know. You usually have to put down a bigger down payment because they want to make sure that there's equity in the home, so that if they have to take it back, then they're going to take it back an asset that's actually worth something.
Yeah, you're not personally guaranteeing it. That means, more money down. A lot of non-recourse loans, we see at 50% down. They have a lot of other criteria. There's some non-recourse lenders actually in that resource we shared that are available to you. Also, non-recourse is required for investing through your self-directed IRA or solo 401k. What is the easiest way to best protect your assets? So I think we covered that in the LLC. Have an LLC set up, but have the right structure for you, right? And talk with the right people.
The 2 big states you'll hear a lot about are Nevada and Delaware. Or not Delaware, Wyoming.
Wyoming.
Yeah. Delaware is where all the businesses go to not pay taxes.
Do you find good PM out of state? We'd love to have. Okay, if you guys have other topics you want us to cover, put it in the chat. So I know we're running out of time for making it through all the questions today, but we'd be happy to, if there's a few topics that we need to cover again, we'd be happy to do that. What other red flags should you stay away from hiring property management? I think we'll just have to cover that in another time.
There was one earlier from the beginning talking about analyzing the deal and understanding all the aspects. And this is one of the things that we discussed before that we wanted to touch on is you want to run the numbers before you buy the property, obviously. We have a spreadsheet. If you go to renttoretirement.com/tools, you can download the spreadsheet that we use to analyze deals ourselves. You can change the numbers to be whatever you want. I know BiggerPockets has a calculator, but we also have an option there on our website for you to look at to analyze deals on your own.
If I live in an area that meets all my goals, should I still considering investing in different states? I think it depends on if you're in an area that you can truly, accomplish your goals, maybe it is best to start locally.
Yeah.
But I would definitely be open to investing out of state.
I would still get a property manager though. You don't want your tenants having your phone number. I mean, like Zach was saying, your time is best served doing pretty much anything other than worrying about what your tenant wants.
All right. Adam, can you see the questions that Mark is throwing up here?
Yeah, let's see.
What sources can you recommend to learn about market data? I mean, honestly, census data. If you can go to government data, they have a lot of good data. Sometimes it's lagged a little bit. The local people in that area, if you're connecting with the right people, they'll know what's up and coming and what's happening in that area to focus on.
Somebody asked if they need to let their loans season for getting conventional loans. Sometimes you might have to let money season in your account if you get it as not a gift for a down payment. They don't want to see any large deposits over the 2 bank statements that you have to give. If it comes to seasoning before you transfer it into an LLC, then a lot of times they want you to wait a few months so that they can sell it off in the secondary market before you transfer the property over to an LLC. But talk with your lender about that before you really go down the rabbit hole. But that's the general advice that I've gotten from lenders.
Looking at what type of loans do I need to use if I run out of my conventional loans? That's as you grow your investment portfolio, this is where you can start to tap into like portfolio loans, DSCR type of loans. But your conventional loans too, another thing you could do if you have a group of properties that has equity in it and you have those loans for a period of time, you can refinance those into a portfolio loan to free up, if you had 5 properties you put into a portfolio loan, that will free up 5 additional conventional spots that you can use again. And so you can recycle those.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
I'm just looking in here, trying to.
Is there a year when a home was built for you to try to avoid? Not necessarily. Make sure you're having inspection foundations. In a lot of these areas, like in the Midwest, for example, I mean, we buy houses that are 100 years old, and like that's okay, especially if they're in like an area that is highly sought after. That real estate's not getting any cheaper, but you just want to make sure you have a quality inspector that's looking at the big things, right? Almost everything else in the house can be repaired and replaced. The foundation is always the big one that can be extremely costly. And so that's one thing I always look at with people.
Yeah, I also would say just look at the houses around it. I mean, you don't want to have, you might not want to have a brand new home in an area where everything's 120 years old. But if the home's been standing for 100 years and the foundation's solid, it's not going anywhere in the 7 to 10 years that you might hold it. And this is one thing that a lot of people sometimes mistake is just because you buy a property today for a buy and hold investment, you're not going to hold this thing. More than likely, you're not holding this thing for 30 years. You're going to sell it at some point and move on to your next investment, either because of a 1031 exchange or, some maybe refinancing to get a different loan. Most likely, you're not holding this thing forever. Buy and hold doesn't mean for life.
All right. I know we're at the half-hour mark, so we brought in our rent retirement mascot. This is my son Sawyer. Can you say hi? He's being a little shy, but let's do our $500 raffle to anyone that put in the question here. So Mark has these pulled up here, and we're gonna just roll the dice here. But you have to be here to connect with us afterwards to have this. So Sawyer, what do you think? and
Sawyer's
stop.
thinking.
Okay, we
Drum roll.
have Captain Star. What is this?
You and the captain make it happen?
Yes. Sawyer selected. It was Captain Star Script. Everyone, thank you so much for joining in. This has been a lot of fun. I know we covered a ton of information. Feel free to reach out at us at renttoretirement.com. Again, that's renttoretirement.com to learn more about out-of-state investing, to learn about turnkey investing. If you guys have questions, if you have topics that you want us to cover, it's been a lot of fun. And real estate investing is a lifelong journey. You're constantly learning. So thank you guys again.
Really appreciate the time you spent educating yourself with us today. Don't forget, if you want a copy of the top 20 markets to invest in 2023, you can email podcasts@renttoretirement.com. We'll get that sent out to you as soon as possible. That's podcasts@renttoretirement.com. Also, leave us a review on whatever platform you listen to our podcast on. Send it over our way. To take a screenshot and send it over to podcasts@renttoretirement.com. And we will get that gift card sent out to you, as well as enter you in a raffle for a $500 closing cost credit that we will be drawing at the end of June 2023. Really appreciate the time you spent to educate yourself. Talk to you on the next episode.
Thanks for watching the Rent to Retirement YouTube channel. Check out some of our other videos, like this one, or this one here.